Hello, dear viewer. I hope you've already subscribed by clicking the bell so you don't miss new parts or new stories. Enjoy the story and of course have fun watching it. Dig 2 Graves. Chapter 4. Tuesday, 12:13 p.m. Unable to find anything better, I've taken up residence at Bud's. I wasn't technically fired, but I wasn't exactly welcome in the office. Bill needed to get back to his office after our meeting with Susie and Vicky. He said that he would be hard to contact for most of today, but to let Janine know of any new developments. According to Tracy, Bud is somewhere in Houston right now, checking out a hunch. I wish he would wait, and I could go with him. But Tracy said he left this morning. The worst part is that I feel like my life is falling apart and there is nothing I can do to stop it. I know I have good people working for me, but I've always been a person who rolls up my sleeves and gets my hands dirty. This waiting was driving me crazy. Even the report Tracy handed me from Bud did little to ease my frustration, as the audio and video recordings made last night at my house revealed nothing significant. It's been a hell of a day, and it's barely noon now. In some ways, today is worse than yesterday. Yesterday, at least I was doing something, even if I was flailing around like a chicken with its head cut off. I can see that my attitude towards Susie and my marriage is slowly changing. I am finding it increasingly difficult to see how I can survive this. I'm already having a hard time getting over her betrayal on Friday night. Now I'm beginning to suspect that she may be part of this setup. If I find out she's involved, I'm in for one hell of a payback. I think back to this morning's meeting. As we were leaving, I asked Bill about the stunt he did at the end of the meeting. In a way, it made me angry. Actually, it's more than that. I'm not angry. I'm jealous. He got to her. He waited 10 years, but he finally got his chance. The way I feel now, I can't wait that long. A knock on the door catches me off guard, and I look up from the office I borrowed from Bud to see Tracy entering. "Bud's calling you," she says. "Bud?" I say into the phone, picking up the receiver. Tracy smiles at me and leans over the table. For a moment, I get a marvelous view of Tracy's blouse. Tracy smiles mischievously, knowing exactly where my gaze is going, and presses the lighted button on the front of the telephone, and suddenly I hear Bud talking to someone. Then Tracy presses the hands-free button, and Bud's voice comes out of the speaker. "Bud? Do I repeat myself? What the hell took you so long? Tracy had to give you lessons on how to operate the phone? If you only knew how close you were to the truth," I laugh. Tracy smiles and finally straightens up and walks back to her desk, but not before wiggling her hips a little exaggeratedly on the way. "I wish I could go there with you, Bud." "Yes, of course, but you'd only slow me down. We've been doing some digging, and very important ones at that. But before I dump them on you, I want to wait until I get it all sorted out. Do you think you can schedule a meeting between us and Benner for tomorrow morning?" "Tomorrow morning, Bud. That's going to be a little difficult. I have a meeting at the firm where I have to give them my answer. Bill and I have hardly had time to study the package they offered, and we plan to look at it tomorrow morning." "Damn," Bud grumbled. "Well, you need to hear what I've dug up before you hold that meeting, and especially before you meet with your wife and her lawyer. Would you mind telling me what you've been able to find out so far?" "I don't want to be cryptic, but I'm still undecided about my plans, and it's best to keep things quiet until I know for sure. So we need to get together sometime tonight. You need to set a time when the three of us can talk, and it needs to be late because you're going to be really busy the rest of the day. I need you to fly to Houston right away." "Pronto? You mean right now?" "The sooner the better. But first, organize the damn meeting." "Okay, I'll do it here. I'll ask Tracy to find me a flight, and I'll try to make an appointment for tonight myself. Do you think 9 o'clock is late enough? And where can I meet you when I get there?" "I think not before 9 o'clock, and no, you won't be meeting me here in Houston. On second thought, I think later would be better, say 10 o'clock at night. Make an appointment at my office in Dallas. While you're in Houston, you'll have your own little job. We got a lead on your secretary. She's really here, if you can believe it." "You're deceiving me." "No, and I know you need to chat with her. So write down this address and get your ass over here." I write feverishly, while Bud gives me the address of the apartment. He reminds me again to make an appointment for tonight, and we hang up. I first dial the number I have for Janine, get up and walk over to Tracy's desk in the reception area. Janine answers on the first ring, and I quickly bring her up to speed on the search for Heidi. Just as quickly, she tells me that there's no way in hell I can talk to Heidi alone. She tells me to book a plane ticket for her, along with my own, and that she will meet me at the airport. I give Tracy my American Express card and ask her to perform magic at the airport for 2. I ask her to find the first flight to Houston and find a return flight that lands at Love Field around 9 p.m. As Tracy starts pounding away at the keyboard, I go back to my temporary office, gather all my things, and get ready to head to the airport. Tracy is just finishing booking the tickets when I return to her desk. I smack her on the cheek as she hands me 2 e-tickets and an itinerary. I quickly call Janine, give her the flight information, and tell her exactly where I'll be picking her up at the airport. We'll both have to hurry to make it on time. It's only as I hang up the phone that I remember that Bud asked me twice not to forget. Having trouble catching Janine at the phone a second time, I tell her that we need to arrange for Bill to meet us tonight and ask if she could arrange something no earlier than 10 o'clock since our flight doesn't arrive until 9 p.m. She says she'll find someone to set it up. Tuesday, 3:49 p.m., Houston. Now think of Janine, I say quietly as we walk up the stairs. She's rather shy. I'll introduce you and explain why you're here. Just smile and nod, okay? She looks at me, smiles, and nods. I feel funny one of the few times in the last 4 or 5 days. Smiling, I look around the building that Bud says Heidi is currently living in. I shake my head and hope it's something very temporary for both of us. There was no security on the front door, so we just walked in and up the stairs to the 2nd floor. The hallway was at least clean, though dimly lit. We walk down the hallway and soon find ourselves in front of office 211B. With a nervous sigh and a glance at Janine, I knock on the door. At first, I hear nothing, but then I catch the light sound of approaching footsteps. I see the spyglass in the door and hear an "oh my god" on the other side of the door. The door chain rattles, and 2 bolts later, the door swings open, revealing a very surprised Heidi. After the past few days, I don't know what to make of Heidi. I watch her eyes water, and then she steps over and suddenly hugs me tightly. Pulling away, she blushes, and a little of the old Heidi comes out in her. She smiles shyly at me, and only then notices my colleague. "I can't believe you're here, Mr. Vickers. I don't even know how you found me, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised," she says, keeping her eyes on Janine. I watch as she considers the tight blouse and skirt that Janine seems to favor. "Mr. Vickers?" she asks in a veiled and slightly disapproving tone. "Heidi, you've been calling me Jake for 10 years. I see no reason why you should change now." A smile touches her lips faintly, but she casts a wary, suspicious glance at Janine. Suddenly I realize that if my beliefs are correct, Heidi has no idea what's going on in Dallas, and she wonders why I'm here, next to Janine. "Janine, this is Heidi Bevis, my administrative assistant, and actually my right hand and conscience. Heidi, this is Janine Prescott. She's a paralegal." I think about explaining more, but right now less is better. Heidi looks at both of us confused, then awkwardly steps back and invites us in. I have been to Heidi's home in Dallas several times, helping her with home repairs and other such things. I know that most of her family lives here in Houston. In fact, my previous ill-fated trip included a stay in Houston, and that was one of the reasons Heidi accompanied me on this trip. Heidi ushers us into a small living room, invites us to sit down, and asks if we would like something to drink. We both politely decline. "You're hard to figure out, Heidi," I tease her. She looks confused, then puzzled. "I'm really sorry I left you so quickly. I wanted to stay long enough to make sure they replaced me with someone good enough for you. But they told me not to worry about that, and that it was more important that I come here to Houston to help my brother." I realized that Heidi must have just answered a few riddles, but I didn't know which ones yet. "Heidi, are you okay?" I asked her. "Are you in trouble?" She looks puzzled again. "Yes, I'm perfectly fine. I was more worried about you. I tried to call you this morning, but no one was picking up. Then I tried to call Mr. Weston, but they told me he wasn't available. So I called the front desk and asked for you, but they said you weren't working there anymore. Mr. Vickers, are you in trouble? I was told it was just a routine matter." "You didn't get fired because of me, did you?" she asks, casting another suspicious glance at Janine, who has now taken the chair across from me. Despite the seriousness of my position, I can't help but notice with the edge of my eye the long leg exposed from the crossed legs under her short skirt. I have to force myself to focus on Heidi. Suddenly I'm in one of those situations where I don't even know what to do. I glance over at Janine, but she shrugs indifferently. Finally I ask, "Heidi, just tell me what's going on. Janine and I came all this way to find you and make sure you were okay." Heidi looks at me with bewilderment. She throws another angry glance at Janine, who only smiles back. "Didn't Miss Hinckley tell you what happened? She promised to explain why I had to run away from you." "No, sit down and tell me about it." "This is awful, Jake. I mean, I knew it would be like this, of course, but it's still awful. Just calm down and tell me about it." "This is my brother Bumper. The one that keeps getting in trouble?" "Yeah, that's him. He did it good this time, Jake. He got caught buying drugs, and this is the third time. The DA told him he's going to jail. You know Bumper wouldn't hurt a fly. Can you imagine what those hardened criminals will do to him if he goes to jail? When did all this happen? I ask anxiously. Last week, Heidi snorted. Right after you left Houston? Yes. Why didn't you call me and tell me? She looks at me again in bewilderment. I didn't call you because I knew you were working in San Antonio. I can't interrupt your day with my little emergencies. As your boss or as your friend, I think you should have. So how are things now? What can I do to help? Jake? Said Heidi, genuinely perplexed. What? Don't you already know? You know what? I reply, equally puzzled. My attention is distracted for a moment by the sight of Janine spreading her legs and leaving them slightly spread like a scene from Basic Instinct. I can't tell if she's dressed. About my brother, silly. You sent Miss Hinckley here to help me, she said with some disappointment, shifting my attention from Janine's southern belly button to Heidi's face. A quick peripheral glance at Janine's smirking face confirmed my suspicions that there were multiple players in the game. Miss Hinckley showed up, didn't she? I continued. Did she help you? Didn't she call you back? For a moment I consider playing with it and see how it ends. Then I shake my head and decide what's best for me. Heidi, I didn't send Miss Hinckley here, so why don't you tell me what happened? Heidi looks at me in surprise and slowly sits up. I cast a glance at Janine, which was a mistake because she has now spread her knees another delicate inch or two, confirming that she has nothing under her skirt and that she has a very trusting relationship with the razor. I clear my throat and force myself to look at Heidi again. I thought she came to my house in Dallas because you sent her. I'm pretty sure that's what she said. Why don't you tell me what happened, Heidi? I repeated firmly. Over the next 20 minutes, Heidi told me pretty much everything about Hinckley's visit to her. Heidi had found out about her brother on Monday while at work. She had immediately asked Tom Weston, my supervisor, for a family leave of absence. Tom, of course, granted her request, and Heidi made arrangements to travel to Houston on Tuesday night. Heidi told me that while she was packing and making other last-minute arrangements, her doorbell rang, and she was shocked to see Miss Hinckley, the executive director of Human Resources, on her doorstep. Heidi invited her into the house, and Hinckley began to sympathize with Heidi about her brother, saying that she, too, had a younger brother who had fallen into the ugly underbelly of drugs. As Heidi explained to me, Hinckley apparently has relatives in both the Houston Police Department and the prosecutor's office. She offered to make some calls and intercede on Heidi's behalf. Hinckley suggested that she might be able to get Heidi's brother placed in a rehabilitation center instead of incarceration. I interrupt Heidi for a moment and ask her if she has any idea how Hinckley could have known about Bumper. Heidi looks puzzled again and says that Mr. Weston must have told her. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice Janine writing something down on her little PDA and realize that she's making sure we follow up on the developments. I turn to Heidi again and motion for her to continue the story. Heidi was understandably excited about any possibility of her brother staying out of jail. She enthusiastically agreed to Hinckley's plan. Hinckley proved true to her word, and her brother was indeed sent to a rehabilitation center. Heidi had been in Houston since last Tuesday and planned to move here permanently to continue helping her brother. She had already contacted a real estate agent to sell her condo in Dallas. I knew that Heidi's parents were divorced, her father's whereabouts were unknown, and her mother could usually be found in the company of a bottle of vodka. So, everything seems to be okay? I asked somewhat suspiciously. Thinking about how close Hinckley and Schmidt were, I suddenly remembered the old saying about Greeks and gifts. As good as it can be. If the world were perfect, my brother wouldn't be on drugs. But the center he's been referred to seems very promising. I have hope that he'll be able to quit. I smile, genuinely happy for her. In the time I've known her, she's been through several depths of hell for her brother, for her entire family. For a moment I decide whether to bring up the affidavit. Heidi has enough turmoil in her life as it is. So did you get a partner? Asked Heidi unexpectedly, bringing my thoughts back to the topic of conversation. No, Heidi, I reply. Anything but, I think to myself. You didn't? Replies Heidi in surprise. You have nothing to worry about, Heidi. Everything will work itself out when the time comes. But Miss Hinckley said it was already decided when I saw her last Tuesday, Heidi continues. She? I reply in surprise, making another mistake and glaring at Janine. She looks like she's been waiting for this moment and spreads her knees further, only covering herself with them for a moment and crossing her legs. Yes, Jake, Heidi replies. She even made me sign a statement about how much you've done for the company. She? I repeat, even more surprised. I realize I'm still staring at that spot. With an effort, I turn my head back to Heidi. Did you sign the affidavit? No, it's not an affidavit. I've worked for you for enough years to know the difference. It was just a progress report. She had me sign the second page and initial both pages. It was 2 pages, and you said it was glowing? I ask. Yes, the first page was glowing. The second page said something about your leadership skills, and that it was an area for improvement. I asked Miss Hinckley about it, and she said that all performance reports are like that. They had to write something not very positive, regardless of how well the person had performed. I stared at Heidi for a second, trying to comprehend what she'd told me. They copied Heidi's signature? I reached into the briefcase I'd brought with me and pulled out the manila folder containing a copy of the affidavit. Carefully pulling it out and folding in the second page, I handed it to Heidi. Heidi, is this the second page you're talking about? Heidi squints for a moment, then quickly reads the single paragraph. Yeah, I think that's exactly what I signed last week. But I don't understand all this notary stuff. There was no notary here last week. It was just me and Miss Hinckley. Before I can stop her, Heidi flips to the first page. I stand up to try to take the document from her before she can read it. Unfortunately, Heidi is a fast reader, and in the first couple of seconds, she manages to read enough to stand up and turn away from me, preventing me from taking the document from her hands. Oh my God, she exclaimed. Sighing, I sit down and let her read the entire statement. I glance over at Janine, who is now sitting demurely cross-legged, watching Heidi and I chat with interest. Heidi slowly sits down in the nearest chair. I watch as she slowly turns crimson, and the phrase, "Oh my God," is repeated in a whisper. She finishes reading the first page and flips to the second, as if expecting the second page to say something completely different. For a long time she stares at the document. Why, Jake, she stuttered. Calm down, I tell her. I had the exact same feeling the first time I saw her. What does that mean, Jake? She asked. It says, well, it accuses you, us, of having an affair. It says that you made me do things with you. That you made me do things like, well, you know. Heidi buries her face in her palms and begins to sob. Chapter 4 has come to an end, and something is kind of on the way. In general, you are still waiting for the sequel, which will be released very soon. And if you want to read the released chapters without censorship, I left a link to our Telegram channel in the description. To be continued.